allows an API access so builders can build their projects easier. Just connecting to us, you don't have to worry about running a node. And I'm here to talk to you about NFTs. This is a little bit more developer focused, but what I hope to cover here is a little bit of background and use cases with NFTs. Describe some common project concerns if you're building NFT projects. We'll use a tool called Replit and Infura's IPFS API to deploy and mint an NFT, do a bit of live coding. And finally, we'll introduce the ConsenSys NFT API, something that's up and coming that's pretty exciting. All right, so NFTs. Why are we talking about NFTs? As people in this room probably know, they're pretty popular right now. Whether they're headline news with Beeple and like $100 million sales. The marketplaces like OpenSea are starting to get more into the public consciousness. Traditional auction houses like Christie's is auctioning off NFTs. So they're really starting to enter, I think, grow outside of just the Web3 circle. So what is an NFT? If it hasn't been covered before, I'll try to define it here, right? So fungible is something where you have a set of like objects or a set of like items, and you can exchange them for like value. So coins, fiat currency, ETH, Bitcoin, those are all fungible tokens. Non-fungible tokens then implies that you cannot trade them for like value, right? So there's a uniqueness, there's a rarity among the NFTs, amongst the tokens, where I can't just give you my token, you can give me your token, and it's a fair exchange of value. Diving even lower at the developer level, what defines an NFT is simply conformance to one of these two standards that I have on the screen here. ERC 721 or ERC 1155, right? If you implement those interfaces, congratulations, you're an NFT. Simplifying it even further down, the way that I define an NFT is basically metadata that's saved on chain, right, with this token URI. The token URI points to metadata, which defines the NFT, and there's an address that owns that NFT, right? This is really all that we're talking about today. All right, so allow me to get on my soapbox for just a second. While the dominant use case of NFTs is digital collectibles and digital art right now, I wanted to point out some use cases that kind of make the case that NFTs are so much more than just digital collectibles, right? ENS domains, as an example, they conform to the 721 interface, therefore, they're an NFT. They can be transferred and traded just like any other NFT. Other use cases are like real-world deeds. There are projects out there that are trying to take real estate deeds and sort of real-world property and tokenize them on the blockchain using NFTs. And finally, the one that I think is a little bit more interesting and maybe a little bit esoteric is this idea of negative value assets. Like there's an idea that you can take an NFT and represent, like, say, debt paper with it or loans, in which case it behaves like an NFT, right? You can't trade it like for like. But the holder of that NFT could have all of the rights and privileges associated, just like in traditional finance, holding debt paper. All right, now that I said all that, this talk is going to be about digital art. So if you're doing a digital art or a digital collectible project, these are the kinds of concerns that might be floating through your head as you're putting your project together, right? What contract am I going to use? Is it 721? Is it 1155? Do I need to use extensions? Like, am I going to have royalties on this? Sealed metadata. There's a ton of extensions that you can also implement around NFTs. And if you're rolling this yourself, do you need to be an expert at security, at auditing your contract, or do you need to hire, something like ConsenSys Diligence to do an audit on your contract? How comfortable do you feel with real-world value flowing through the contract you just wrote? Another aspect is around the metadata. How do you generate and store all the metadata that is attached to your NFT? I'll dive a little bit further into that in just a few moments. And finally, when you're minting or dropping the NFT, like, what are the mechanics around that? How are you going to do it? Are you going to script it, or are you going to create software to script it? Are you going to do it by hand? Are you going to use a platform like OpenSea or a marketplace where you can just do it through the interface? All right, so let's talk about storage. For storing the metadata and storing the assets, there's basically three methods you could use, right? You could do centralized storage, which is your traditional web hosting. You're going to get a DigitalOcean droplet or a Heroku and host images from a web server, right? Extremely easy, flexible, low cost. Problem is that it happens to be censorship prone. You know, what if your hosting provider isn't welcome in certain geographies? What happens if somebody doesn't pay the bill? What happens when your web server goes offline? So generally not recommended. On-chain storage is an interesting idea. So that token URI that I was talking about can be any URI, including a data URI. So you can encode all of your metadata and save it on-chain. This is great because it's simple, not a lot of moving parts, but it's expensive because you're basically taking all of this metadata and using the chain to store it, right? It's something that you'll have to weigh. The best option, in my opinion, is decentralized storage, something like IPFS, right? It keeps your on-chain storage down so that you're only saving a URL. It's decentralized and has content ID, so you know it's immutable and it's not going to change. And while there's some additional moving parts, like you have to find an IPFS provider or host a node yourself, I think it's worth the additional complexity. All right, so let's mint some NFTs. This is the general thing we're going to be stepping through today. We'll have to collect our assets and store them on IPFS. We'll generate the metadata, store that on IPFS. We'll use Replit to deploy a contract, to mint an NFT, and then we'll make millions of dollars. So let me talk about Replit for just a second. So Replit is a company that makes these sort of online coding environments. It's a really great and easy way to set up, right? It's free, zero setup, zero config, browser-based platform. All you have to have is an internet connection and a browser, and you have an IDE that you can collaborate and share with, right? They launched a Solidity template 4 months ago, which is the basis of the Replit that I'm going to use today. And this is what it's going to basically look like. We'll start from that general Solidity template. I've added some tooling for IPFS and some integration with Infura so that if you wanted to play with it, all of these tools that I'm doing today are out of the box. The basic work around this is you connect the REPL with your MetaMask wallet. You modify the contract Solidity file with any custom logic, anything you want to do there. Manage the assets on Infura's IPFS API, and then deploy and mint. It's pretty easy. And then if you're working on a team, you can share the URL of your REPL, and you can collaborate all in real time. All right, so let's go to demo time. This is the usual warning of live coding demos. All right, so let me just make this bigger. All right, so if you can see on the screen, this is what Replit looks like. You can see there's a code editor here on the left. There on the right, we have a UI. This is where you would connect your wallet. I've already connected my MetaMask wallet, so if not, you would see a connect wallet here. Something to deploy, all of the contracts, all of the NFTs, and then once you've deployed an NFT, you can just call functions within this UI. On the bottom panel here, there's a shell that we can use to interact with the environment, and this is how we'll be managing the IPFS assets. Now, before we get too deep into the live coding, we have to do a little bit of setup. So what you want to do first is either sign up or log into your Infura account. By the way, everything that we're doing today qualifies under the Infura free tier, including all of this IPFS work. So if you wanted to play around with it, there's no charge for any of the stuff that I'm doing up here. So once you log in, you'll want to create a project up here. Select IPFS, name the project. Since I already have projects created, I'm just going to use one of my pre-baked projects. You'll be dumped to a settings page here where you'll see the project ID and secret. So you just copy these project IDs and secrets, come back to the secrets manager in your REPL. Pretty cool, right? Secrets management. And then you'll want to create these two secrets, right? Project under ID, project under secret. These case and words matter here. Input your project ID and project secret, and then you're ready to go. By the way, in this README, all of this stuff that I'm doing is here in this README in case you want to look at it later. All right, so back to live coding. This contract soul is what gets compiled and what'll get deployed, right? Anything defined here, you can choose to deploy. So I'm gonna start with this NFT 721 contract. And since I used a bunch of sort of like badly made memes for this presentation, we're just gonna use that as our NFT source. So we'll name this bad meme token. You can give it an NFT name and a symbol, which is part of the spec, so bad meme token. And the symbol, let's just say it's BM. Right, so now you see it saves and compiles automatically. I didn't have to hit save. And you see the bad meme token listed here in the dropdown. All right, I'm gonna try to deploy this. All right, great. Live coding. Give me just a second. Nobody look at my password. By the way, if you don't use 1Password, you should. It's a great tool. That is not my password. All right. Let's try this again. And let's see if I can get this reworked. Give it a second to boot up. All right. One more time. Confirm. All right. So while that's deploying and we'll wait for that transaction to get confirmed, I'm going to drop in over here to the assets. So let's look at the IPFS part. So I've created in this folder assets. These are all my images and all the metadata that describes those images. The metadata adheres to the OpenSea metadata standard. So if I wanted to hawk this stuff on OpenSea, it's completely compatible. OpenSea should be able to read it and make it freely tradable, right? Take a look at that standard if you're diving into OpenSea type projects. So the IPFS, npm run IPFS -- directory is assets, images, and this is pattern match, so you could just use a glob, everything that ends in JPEG. I think that looks good. I need quotes here. All right, now while that's running, it's going through this directory and uploading it to IPFS. So you can see all of my images that I have in this directory now are now stored in IPFS. You'll want to pay attention to this HTTP link. If I were to click it, it opens the image in IPFS, getting served out of Infura's gateway. So now that we have all of the image URLs, we have to make all the metadata. I cheated a bit and I did all this beforehand, so I have all the metadata in the JSON files. So pretend that I copied and pasted all of these URLs into this metadata JSON, or I was clever and I made some script to do it. Now we need to sync this metadata JSON to IPFS. Easy enough. Oops. I have to change it to the JSON directory, live coding. All right, so now all of our JSON files are now stored on IPFS, and I can start minting tokens. So while I was talking, you can see that bad meme token has now deployed onto the Gurley network. I can now run transactions against this contract. So I'll come over here. Let me just get this down a little bit. Here's our mint function. So this is basically how you mint NFTs. I'm going to come up here and just grab my own address. as a recipient, I'm going to grab the token URL of where our metadata JSON is. I'm going to run that transaction. Confirm, and it's on our way. That easy. We have now accomplished NFT. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
It's for Q&A.
I have one more thing before we kick into Q&A. Let me just go. So we did this at a very low level, right? We're talking about contracts, we're talking about IPFS deployment, we're talking about like deploying in transactions. Well, let's say you don't got time for none of that. Well, ConsenSys is going to be releasing a ConsenSys NFT from our NFT group. And what it will be is a full cycle SaaS platform powered by APIs, SDKs, CLI tools. It's going to come out of the box with a white label market storefront that can support primary drops and secondary trading. Normie buyers can redeem NFTs through email. It's got Stripe integration so you can pay in fiat. It's basically an out of the box solution for NFT projects if you're interested. This QR code goes to this presentation, so all of the links, all of the tools, like everything that you need, you'll have access to. It's a public presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.